Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. My name is Will Stone. Long time no see, long time no talk. I've missed you all. Hopefully you've missed me. Um, I tend to even like before the podcast, just kind of mentally with college football, something that I love very dearly. Um, After the national championship, I do take a bit of just a breather from the sport. It's very much a dead period, like not from a recruiting standpoint or whatever, but it's there's just not a lot going on. There's a the players get a break, the coaches get a little bit of a break. Like you've got some junior day stuff, kind of in like in February. Like we had some visitors, some recruits and that sort of thing, but just not a ton going on. So. Uh, and there's not like you can't really like you can if you want to start diving into like there's the way too early top 25s. I've kind of dabbled with that a little bit, but it's a good time of the year to just spend time with your family and not worry too much um, about college athletes. But uh, now that we've had that break, good time for me. Have been on or had been on a bit of a paternity leave, and Graham is doing very well. Mom is doing well. I'm doing well. Um, in that order. So everything is great. But you guys are here to hear about football, so that's what we're going to talk about. If I can ever find this page to share on Facebook, there it is. Oh man. Okay, so I've got this stupid background. I've been using StreamYard for like 2 years now, and they like like out of the blue just doubled their price for what I was for the package I had. It went from $25 to $50, which $50 a month won't bankrupt me. Like I can still feed my family, um, but it just like to double. I mean that's worse than YouTube TV. That's worse than Netflix. I'm like I can't. There's got to be something else. So this is my first streaming on my first broadcast on Restream, which I've heard some people use. This package is $16. I don't need a lot. I'm not Joe Rogan or Cover Three or any other, big name podcast. I don't need the biggest package. So, um, don't clip that, by the way, please. But I've got this dumb background. It's very techie, gradient, colorful thing. I have none of my stuff. I bought this subscription like 10 minutes ago. So, um, it's a work in progress. So yeah, it's all good. Um, anyway, did I share this onto my? I share every episode to my personal Facebook page, so my family can see it. Uh, cool. I've got 4 on Twitter, 2 on Facebook. Wonderful. So what we're gonna do here tonight is a bit of a 2024 college football recap. Not really A&M specific on that part. Uh, Probably touch on it at the end. I don't think I I recorded last before the bowl game, before all of the um, transfer portal commitments and things like that. So definitely want to get into like not the bowl game, but want to get into the rest of that stuff. Um, the 2024, your champion was Ohio State, knocking off Notre Dame, and wasn't uh, wasn't the best game. A bit of a blowout. Notre Dame made it interesting there at the end. I think they were just so and tip of the cap to Marcus Freeman for having the year that they had. They had to go through Georgia. They had to go through Penn State. They were riddled with injury. Some of their best players on defense missed substantial amounts of the season. They lost another guy, uh, defensive tackle in the first round playoff game. Um, I think Riley Leonard missed a big or like a little bit of the Penn State game, like had to come out for a couple drives maybe. And the offensive line was just uh, musical chairs with injuries and youth and that sort of thing. So, um, you know, tip of the cap to them. I think should give you. a little bit of optimism, maybe as an Aggie fan, that Notre Dame was not, you know, this super talented uh, super team of sorts with just loads of NFL draft picks and first round receivers and first round quarterback and that sort of thing. Not like they had some really great guys on defense, some of which will be high NFL draft picks, um, and probably play for a long time. But like their defensive line, just from a raw ability standpoint, wasn't more talented than what A&M had last year. It was just, hey, this is our was it the fourth year with Freeman? 22, 23, third year with Freeman and Golden, who has since left. Talk about that later. But third year in the system, like super veteran team. Fifth year seniors, sixth year seniors from the COVID rule still hanging around. So, but just like, hey, it's a defensive minded head coach. Had a very mediocre first year. I think that they had a decent record, but they lost to Marshall. They lost to Stanford, who were not good at all in those 2 years. Um, Took another step in year two, and obviously uh, broke through and had a great playoff run. Made it to the title game in year three. So, um, and like I said, like I think there's some similarities between Marcus Freeman and Mike Elko. Um, and also still TBD. I heard a noise just now. I don't know what that was. Um, I don't know if someone's trying to message me on here. I got a chat. There we go. You Oh, Kyle, it's good to have you back. Glad they're probably making podcasting more expensive. Yeah, if there's one thing we need, it's fewer people starting podcasts. Really, if you're any smaller than me, just yeah, just don't do it. We don't need any more. I'm kidding, of course. Never left. Kyle's always been here. Never left. Never lost. Um, he's going to be interested to hear some of the things we talk about in this episode. But anyway, Notre Dame, great year. Could there be similarities with Freeman and Elko? Something about I think I put this in on Twitter or something, but um, going off of SP Plus defensive ratings, um, Notre Dame in Marcus Freeman's first year was like 40 something, like 40th in like nationally in defensive efficiency. Um, they were top three this year in his third year. They made a pretty big jump last year as well. I think into the teams or maybe top 15, top 10ish range, and we're up there. I think there was a clear cut top three this year. You look at any metric, like any advanced stats, it's always going to be Ohio State, Texas, and Notre Dame. If you just for opponent, that sort of thing, any kind of metric, those three were just a cut above everyone else on like defensively, and I think you saw that, which kind of brings me to my. I got 2 points here. One is I think Ohio State, 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes were the last super team that we might ever see in college football, at least maybe for a long time. I don't know if so. If this is way out of left field, but at the end of World War II, the NCAA suspended transfer rules, and all the best players just transferred to Army for one season, and then went back to their other schools. But that one year in '45, Army was just a juggernaut, and with talk and memes about World War III. I don't want to get in any politics, but that just popped into my head that after the end of World War III, if they suspend the rules again, you may see everyone, imagine like Caleb Williams and Jeremiah Smith transferring to Army for a semester and winning a title. That's a funny thought. So that's one. Is that I think super teams are a thing of the past with recruiting and well, not recruiting, but like with obviously with the transfer portal. Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State can't just hang on to five-star guys, future NFL draft picks, and not play them for the first two seasons or even three seasons. If you're a high caliber player and you're stuck behind, you go to Georgia, you're stuck behind, you know, two future NFL draft picks. You're probably going to be there for about a year, and you're going to be like, well, I want to play I don't want to play behind Michael Williams or Jalen Carter or whoever else. I'm going to go to Missouri or I'm going to go to Indiana. I'm going to go wherever else, and they're going to give me a lot of money because they want me. They need me, and Georgia doesn't need me as badly. They probably paid me a little bit, to sign and that kind of thing. But um, now that if I'm not one of the if I'm not the top guy, like the 5 star, $10 million that we've seen in some cases, kind of deal. Maybe you're making a couple 100,000, maybe maybe closer to 1 million. But what if Missouri comes along and says, "Hey, you're our missing piece. We're going to pay you $2 million," or like just I'm just it's not hard to. It's very easy to look at rosters now and be like, "Oh well." Um, Back in the day, kids could sit at Alabama until they were juniors and just burst onto the scene and go in the first round the next year. It happened all the time, especially at like defensive tackle. But those days are done. They're gone. They're over. Um, you're still going to have very talented teams at the top, but I'm interested to watch this from a draft standpoint. And like Michigan had a lot last year. Obviously, LSU in 2020 draft. Um, uh, Ohio State's had some up there. Georgia had a big one after 2021. So um, I feel like that's one of those records. It's going to become one of those that'll never get broken because it's going to be so difficult to amass, 17 NFL draft picks that are all eligible all in the same year and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I think that's one thing to look for, and especially that's a thought that I have coming up on 2025 as you start to look at uh, not just returning production, which came out last week from ESPN's Bill Connolly, um, but look around at who the good teams were last year and who the good teams have been, and where they rank in that metric, and who they have coming back, and what quarterbacks are coming back, and like yeah, that's a whole thing that we're going to get into. But super teams are dead, which is a good thing. I think it's a good thing for A&M because I don't know if we were ever going to get to that status. It'd be very difficult, but this will level the playing field. Second thing is, along with that, uh, you're seeing a rebound of great defense beating great offense, and I use the word great on purpose because some guys I respect, like Bud Elliott, um, on an episode of Cover Three just last summer, was like, yeah, elite offense beats elite defense. Like 9 times out of 10, it will. What I think now is we don't have elite offense anymore. Um, you go back and look at the advanced stats and just at the like any metric you want to on 2020 Alabama or 2019 LSU or 2018 Oklahoma or Clemson or Ohio State from any of those years. Um, it's really not even that like this year. The best offense was Miami, and they were like a 40 something on uh, like on like their rating number was like a 40, like which is a great number. It's like a 45, but like LSU in 2019 was like a 54, and Oklahoma like all those teams were clearing 50, and I can't really quantify that, but you can see when you look at like no team has Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson on the same team like that. That's not going to happen again, probably. It'd be very unlikely. And I think what you're seeing is, uh, yeah, like at the highest level, like if you put the 2019 LSU offense against the 2021 Georgia defense, I'm taking LSU. Like if those two teams played each other, I'm taking LSU because that offense was unstoppable. Um, you don't have that anymore. Now you have instead of elite, you have great or really really good offenses. Um, Ohio State had a really good offense, great offense. They weren't elite by any number, you know, um, but they had a great defense to go along with it. So that's why I think I named those three teams. That's three of the final four. Penn State was also, a top 8 defense by the advanced metrics. So um, I'll probably do an episode or maybe an article on this later on, but just looking at the like in the playoff field, um, the number of like who has the best defenses? Are they in the playoff field? Probably. Even teams like SMU and Indiana had like they played good defense. They weren't like the reason why Miami didn't make it is because their defense was bad. It wasn't really even average. So that's why they had the best offense in the country, missed the playoff. I feel like in a 12 team field, that's probably pretty rare. Although I say that LSU would have missed the playoff in 2023, and they had the best offense with Jaden Daniels and Lee Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Um, so yeah, I think now like we're so used to saying, oh, like who has the best quarterback, who has the best receivers, and I think like, this kind of ties back to my earlier point about 2025 when when you look at the top 25, like the early top 25s for this coming season. It's Ohio State or Texas, and Texas gets a lot of love. I think because the year they've had, the years they've had, the past 2 years, they've made they made the 14 playoff, they made the final four, semifinals this past year with some great teams. Um, they they're they're in the hundreds in returning production, but everyone says, oh, Arch Manning and Steve Sarkisian and great offense, and that's number one. They have the best quarterback. They're a talented team. They're number one. That's just because you can't really pick. It's hard to pick anyone to because uh, I talk about turnover and all this kind of stuff. Like uh, if you go by the metrics, like Alabama was a top five team last year. They didn't look like it most of the time. Um, they have no clue who their quarterback's going to be. They have one badass receiver uh, and a great player at linebacker. I don't know what else they have. I mean, like I can't say, oh, that's a top five team. They could be 8-4. Georgia could be, an 8-4 type of team, as talented as they are, and losing so many offensive linemen and defensive linemen, guys that have been there a long time, uh, like fifth year, senior, veteran type guys, are gone. And I know they're going to have guys replace them. They always do, but um, I just think it's like what we saw last year with some of the wild upsets and things like that. I think that's going to be the norm. Um, it's going to be, and maybe this is, you know, I think it's going to be more like the '90s, more like the '80s and '90s, where there's not, you could say like Nebraska was a powerhouse, Miami obviously was a powerhouse, but teams like Washington and Colorado claim titles, like in the '90s, and uh, I'm just saying it's hard to sit here in March and project, hey, I think, you know, like the safe money is say, hey, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, that's probably your top five, in some order. What I do have for you is uh, my friend Bill Connolly, his SP plus. So I think in the same week last week, we got returning production rankings, which I'll get into with A&M on that, and then his actual initial uh, 2025 SP plus projections. So his first pass at the rankings. Um, I was on this screen. I redid my whole office and didn't have podcasting in mind when I planned it, so I'm having to cobble some things together. But going off of Bill's numbers, um, and what did I rank this by? It's not ranked in order. There we go. Number one, Ohio State. Number two, Alabama. Number three, Penn State. I actually kind of agree on that one. Number four, Georgia. Number five, Notre Dame. Maybe surprisingly. Number six, Oregon. Seven, Texas. Eight, Tennessee. Nine, Ole Miss. 10, LSU. Fittingly, on brand, A&M comes in at number 12. Um, and I think just real quick, and I kind of want to, I probably should have planned this better on when to get into the transfer portal stuff because that's probably uh, more on your mind than these numbers that this nerd put together. All due respect, Bill. But there's kind of this like, I guess here's how I'll put it. When I last spoke to you guys, I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done picking, A&M to win 10 games. I'm never doing it again until they actually go and do it. Until further notice, I will predict 8-4 until they stop going 8-4, or 8-5 in many cases, many such cases. Um, I'm still with that. I'm still not going to predict anything above 8 wins. But um, to spin you a little bit of optimism, and it's not, I wouldn't even call it spinning. I'm just stating the facts here. Um, there's so on the A&M schedule. Uh, First of all, these numbers are very close together. Like Texas, on a neutral field, Texas would be about a 3.5 point favorite over A&M as it sits today. Obviously, that's will change wildly by. This is very, very uh, there's going to be a lot more data as we get in actual football. This is just off of this is just preseason projections, but so like at the end of last season, Texas was probably like a 10 or 11 point favorite, just based off these same numbers, because they had performed that much better throughout the season than A&M had. So what I'm trying to say is it's all very mashed together. Like you have Ohio State, their their number is a 28. After that, it's kind of a drop off to 26, 25. But like A&M, like there's this whole just blob of teams. Like even from it's like, well, first of all, what's shocking to me is that Notre Dame is our toughest opponent based off of this, and not Texas. Both are on the road. I will see about Notre Dame. I think they'll be very good. But I think you could say those are the top two. Like both, like both, like one was in the semifinals and one made the title game and lost. They both lost to Ohio State, so they could have been, they could have been the second and third best teams in the country last year. Um, so yeah, I think that's fair to put. But after that, you have LSU pretty much neck and neck with A&M at number 10, Missouri at 15, South Carolina at 16, Florida at 17, Auburn at 23. Um, that's kind of that's who you have to beat to not go 8-4 again. Um, like even if you like say, hey, you know what, Notre Dame and Texas, they like let's just say that they're ahead of where A&M is right now. Maybe in the third year that A&M could beat those teams, and like they could beat either one of them. But just if you mark those down as losses, then you can't lose to more than one of LSU on the road. Or what's good about this is these home games are, well, except for Missouri, I guess they're on the road, but um, you play Florida at home, you play South Carolina at home, you play Auburn at home. I think all very early, except for South Carolina, I think is November, but a bunch of those games are early in the year. Now, some other teams that you shouldn't write off, never write off Arkansas when they play A&M, especially that's in Fayetteville, but they're much further down this list. Mississippi State is much further down this list um, in terms of their ranking for A&M's opponents. Um, so I say all that to say when I go and look at what those teams bring back, it's not very threatening. And um, don't take this as saying, hey, Will saying A&M brings back a badass team and these other teams suck and lost all their players. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that South Carolina getting a lot of love. Uh, some of that is deserved. They had a great team, a really really good team last year. They are a second half uh, Lenore Sellers injury away from making the playoff. He got hurt in the LSU game. Don't think he was able to come back. And if they beat LSU, which they should have, they're in the playoff at 10-2. Like there's no debate. And SMU or Indiana get booted out. in that scenario. They had a badass defense. They had a 245-pound quarterback who no one could tackle one-on-one. He's back, but uh, the entire defense is gone, with the exception of like they bring back a couple guys in the secondary, and obviously one of the best pass rushers in the country. In 2027, in that draft, it's going to be a debate between Colin Simmons from Texas and Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, and and sorry, my sister-in-law has a comment that just totally threw me for a loop on here. And no, I don't remember that. I have to talk to Blake about that after this. So they bring back Dylan Stewart on defense. He is tremendous. Uh, he'll probably be a preseason All-American. I think him and Simmons will be preseason All-Americans at defensive end. But like I listen to these draft shows, and they talk about T.J. Sanders, the three technique for Carolina. They talk about Kyle Kennard, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year last year. They talk about Demetrius Knight, middle linebacker, who was a stud. They talk about Nick Amenworry, who put up just sick numbers at the combine at like 6'3", 220, running like a 4.3 at safety. Just a true, you know, a true freak of an athlete. Um, they had some crazy. They had like 30 seniors last year. Those guys are gone. I get it, and like I think it's a common theme with uh, South Carolina, with um, Florida in particular, that they have these really really exciting young quarterbacks in Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway at Florida. Um, I totally get that, and uh, I think the SEC is having a bit of a renaissance in the quarterback spot. Garrett Nussmeier, really good quarterback. Arch Manning, probably going to be a really good quarterback. Where does Marcel Reed fit into that equation? I'd say probably upper half of the league, without a doubt. Um, but probably, I bet most folks would have him behind a Sellers for sure, a Lagway, a Manning, um, Nussmeier, and you play all four of those guys. Um, so I think it's similar. Like when I was breaking down last year's schedule, I'm like, okay, the toughest teams on the schedule probably have the best quarterbacks. Um, but they had Missouri had lost a bunch of guys, like especially on defense. LSU had lost the two great receivers and obviously the great quarterback in Daniels. Um, who else am I missing? Notre Dame had lost, two NFL tackles on offense and a plethora of other guys. Well, now I look at it and I'm like, okay, uh, if A&M had to play last year's schedule, like those exact teams, like exact rosters, I'd be way more worried than the current, than the teams are actually going to be playing. Um, I don't understand the LSU hype at all, at all. I want to be clear on that. Um, I think they had maybe a top five uh, LSU or top five transfer portal class, which that's great. But when you look at like, oh, they got some offensive linemen. Okay, those guys aren't as good as Will Campbell and Emory Jones. Um, Whoever they got in the portal is not good as Braden Swenson. Um, who else do they like? I think that like they're gonna be fine at receiver, and obviously I think Nussmeier's a pretty good quarterback. Defensively, they could take a step, but they've got some really really young guys up front they're going to be depending on. Some of their depth again, like Georgia, like they can't hang on to that depth anymore. Like those guys are going to go somewhere else and start. Um, there's so much time to get into that and break that down, but it's just kind of on my mind from a hey, looking at the schedule objectively, who scares you, and what are those teams bringing back and that kind of thing. I'll I'll leave, I'll leave you with this before we move on. Um, And take this just with a grain of salt. This is not saying, not projecting anybody over anybody or that kind of thing. I'm just saying, and Bill Connolly is just saying, from a returning production standpoint, from what they bring back, A&M is number 6 in the country in what they bring back from a snap count, production. It's not just starters; it's like actual like numbers put into it. A lot more than just, hey, did this guy start a game or not? They're 6 in the country. They're 19 on offense. They're 12 whoop on defense. Texas is 105 in the country. A&M is, sorry, 103. So A&M number 6, Texas 103. Where you're like, Will, didn't they lose a lot of guys the year before and they were still just fine? That's totally fair. I agree with that. But this time last year, A&M was 17th or 18th in these same returning production numbers. Texas was 25th. So they go from 25th to 103rd, and it's really because of their offense. Their offense is 126, what they bring back, and that's 4 or 5 guys on the offensive line. That's the quarterback that started pretty much all your games. Uh, Good running back with Blue, Bond, Golden, Helm, those kinds of guys are gone. But really, like the 4 guys on the offensive line, 3 of those guys played 3 straight years together. Didn't miss a lot of games. Just so veteran and so experienced, and it's going to be an issue or something that the Texas will have to figure out. But um, I'll tell you about what this comment I got from my sister-in-law. Um, it said, "Hey, remember when Bobby Escobedo beat you in the high follies?" Which I can't even I can't even explain to anyone what knee high follies is because that's so far in the back of my memory. If you grew up in Groesbeck, you're probably geeking out right now. If you didn't, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But My brother chimed in and said, "Hey, Bobby Escobedo's with us right now." Shout out to Bobby, man. Good buddy of my brother's. Glad you guys are, are getting together and having a good time, and appreciate you listening. But um, uh, be safe whenever you are going to wherever you're trying to get to next. Um, Yeah, let me stop for a second. I don't have a sound clip pulled up. You got to just sit here in silence for a second while I take a drink, and we can get into this transfer portal class and some more A&M thoughts. Good comment to bring us back in from my uh, best of friends, Alante Brooks, on Facebook. He said, we're talking about A&M and what their record's going to be. He says they got receivers now. It's a 10-win season. Book it with 3 exclamation points. Um, Alante is a Longhorn fan, but also an Aggie fan. I know we're dynamic. It's when people that you love, when your family goes to different schools, you start to you tend to be a little more flexible with who you root for. So if A&M is playing anybody else, AB, he's rooting for the Aggies. If it's the Lone Star Showdown, that's a different story. But um, I think everyone kind of knew going into last season, and we talked about it on here ad nauseum, that hey, our biggest, you know, if there's a glaring weakness on this team, it is the receiver position because we just don't know. There wasn't much proven. We didn't know what we were going to get from that unit. That kind of bore itself out uh, in 13 games. The guys you lost, with all due respect, like I'm a big Jade Walker guy. Um, I think he can get on an NFL squad and be a plus player on special teams without a doubt. He's blocked like two or three kicks in big moments at A&M, and just a locker room like uh, infectious energy type guy, and did some nice things at receiver. I think he's probably not as polished as he needs. Like he's got plenty of athleticism, not super polished in route running and that sort of thing. But um, you lose Noah Thomas to the portal. I would have liked to have kept him, but that is what it is. You lose Moose Muhammad. We know about Moose's shortcomings and being in the good graces of various coaching staffs. Um, so now that was our biggest weakness. That remained our biggest weakness last year, and just really hamstrung the offense. Hamstrung, I think, both Connor and Marcel from having more success. And real quick, before I get too far into this, if you like Josh Pate, I like Josh Pate. I think he's a smart guy, and this was actually a really, really good interview. But I listened to earlier today. He sat down with Coach Elko about 45 minutes and just talked about different things. Very, very insightful. I would recommend going to check that out on Josh's podcast feed. Um, but something Elko said is, and he's a sharp guy, but the way he put, he was asked about, hey, 2024 season, first year, how would you describe it as a success, failure, like step in the right direction? What was it? And I think Elko, because I was I was pretty pissed off after the bowl game. I think 8-5, it doesn't really matter, but 8-5 just sucks so much harder than 9-4 for whatever reason. And I'll always go back to the Auburn game being one of the worst losses and most inexcusable losses in recent memory. Um, and you know what? Maybe you get a mulligan or two in your first year. I think we're all in much more of a prove it mode. But the way Elko put it was, you know, success or failure. And he was like, hey, it was a step in the right direction, but we blew an opportunity to make multiple steps in the right direction. And I tend to agree with that. I think 8-4 at this program is a failure, if it's a first year or not. But you still have, that LSU game where plenty of recruits and that sort of thing were watching. You've got that in your back pocket. That's a big plus from last year. I think the growth of your young quarterback is a big plus. Um, but the missed opportunity is what we talked about here last year. Like you got one loss going into November, and you're going to be favored in three of the next four. Instead, you lost three of the next four. Your only win after that moment was New Mexico State, who was abysmal. Not even the good New Mexico State from the year prior that beat Auburn, the bad New Mexico State that played last year. Um, and so yeah, like I think from a culture standpoint, from a roster building, program building, um, the guys got some confidence from I think especially playing at home. Um, but down the stretch, when you hit a few key injuries, you run into some buzz saws in Columbia, South Carolina, and then Texas at home. Um, it put a damper on things to where you were sitting there, hey, with a healthy Le'Veon Moss, if we have a healthy Chase Basantis, we could do something that hasn't been done here since the '90s, like ending the regular season with one loss, playing for a conference title game. Last one was in '98. So that would have been several steps forward. That would be, hey, we're way ahead of schedule. Like, I think we're on track now. I think, like every year is a big year. Like it can change like on a dime. But you were good enough to, I think, get some cachet. Like we'll talk about transfers in a minute. They did very well there. They are doing exceptionally well with high school recruiting. but you cannot have a dud of a year two. Um, you go out here and go 6-6 uh, in 2025, and that seat is boiling hot. It is. You're going to struggle to hang on to some of the guys you already got right now, and you're going to struggle unless you really break the bank to get impact transfers to come in here. Um, so obviously that's a nightmare scenario would be 6-6. But enough. Like let's talk about what they actually did and who they actually brought in via the transfer portal. Um, by my by my list that I've got, there's 13 guys. I'm not including Micah Hudson. I don't think he's going to be on the team, which is a bummer, but it is what it is. So the highlights here. I think you have probably a couple starters, maybe 3 or 4 starters, or maybe 4 or 5 starters, and then a couple of like lottery tickets. Hey, we'll take a flyer on some athleticism, and then some older, kind of hey, like we need numbers at this spot. This guy's a competent player. Maybe he can give us something, type of thing. So um, I think we'll start at receiver. That's by far the biggest issue, and I think where they made the biggest additions here. Number one for me is wide receiver Casey Concepcion from NC State. He was the ACC Freshman of the Year his freshman season. Uh, he They kind of used him like we used Anaya Smith under Jimbo, where he's a slot receiver, probably sub 6 foot, maybe 5'11", somewhere in there. Um, built a little bit like a running back, not as much. He's bigger than Anais, probably faster than Anais, but that similar kind of shiftiness. Um, he's got plenty of speed, but they would get him on jet sweeps. They hand him the ball. They would throw it to him on screen, throw it to him down the field. Like he kind of did everything for them with not a very good quarterback in 2023. Last year, they took another step back at quarterback. Just not a very good team, kind of all around. His numbers took a dip. Some folks will see that and be worried. I wouldn't be. You watch the kid play. He's got the goods. He's what this team needs. I think he's your day one, no doubt starter in the slot, and I think he leads the team in targets. To be honest, I'm in a. I'll get into this later in the coming weeks, but I'm doing a couple of best ball college fantasy drafts, um, where it's 30 rounds. You draft who you draft. You don't set a lineup. You don't do waivers or trades. It's just hey, the guys that you picked, like whatever they score is what you're scoring. Like they pick the highest ones for like whatever starting spot you have. I took Concepcion in like the 6th round in one of mine. Um, because I was looking at guys like, hey, which guy is going to lead his team in targets, like by a mile? I think Concepcion is that guy. I think he is going to get. They're going to really build around his skill set and what he can do. I am equally as excited about the other receiver, if I'm being quite honest. Uh, Receiver Mario Craver from Mississippi State. This dude looked like an All-American against us, and maybe you could say that's because of our secondary, because of our defensive scheme, whatever it was. But the dude has wheels. He had a big, like 70-yard touchdown catch against Georgia. I'm trying to find his stats here. 5'10", 170, so a smaller guy, but he has true breakaway speed. Averaged so he only caught 17 balls as a true freshman last year at Mississippi State, but he averaged 21.6 a catch. So the plays he made, like he's getting long, like deep threat catches, and he can take the top off of a defense for sure. So I think you upgraded uh, in a big way with those two. Um, your speed ability, like your team speed at receiver, your just flat out receiver skills, guys who know how to play the position and can be impact guys. I think if Craver and Concepcion are not starting, I will be stunned at that. You might say, hey, that's great and all, but we lost 6'6" Noah Thomas. we missed out on 6'3" Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, ended up at LSU. This guy's 5'10", Concepcion's 5'11", Terry Bussey's 5'11", or 6 foot maybe. Um, what's the deal with that? And I get that. Like I tend to have that same line of thinking as well. I you know I know like Noah Thomas has his faults as a football player, but he had a really nice year last year, and it was not always perfect, not by any means, but I think he would have started for you this fall and been a big part of your plans in 2025. And with that size, but yeah, I mean, Alante puts this, you know, pretty candidly. He may be 6'5", but he played like he was 5'9", and it's I can't disagree with that. You would think, hey, like this guy's just should be high pointing everything, and yeah, yeah. Uh, I think that dog is missing in him. I think that's probably is probably as nicely as you can say that, but I definitely I think a lot of folks I think on the A&M side of things would agree with you. So why it's while it's one that hey you're like hey I wish we had this guy. It's not this dagger like oh my gosh we lost Noah Thomas, what the hell are we gonna do? It's not that kind of thing. So um, but also you go and look back at our receivers coaches Holman Wiggins from Bama in the from like 19 to 2023 when he was there. So 2020 they had the best offense, one of the best of all time, and their starting receivers are 5'10" Devontae Smith, 5'10" Jalen Waddle, and Slade Bolden, who I bet you guys couldn't pick him out of a lineup if you had to right now. Um, and they killed everybody. And if you have speed, like you can't be small and slow, but we got some guys who are in that 5'10", 6 foot range that have some real speed and actually know how to play the position. I will take that all day, every day over. Oh, well, this guy's really tall. He's should be a good possession guy. No, forget that. Like, if this is what you got to go play with, like that's plenty to go out there and score points and win football games. So, um, not having a true X, like I don't really care about that. So, um, like those are your two big ones. I think who I'm really intrigued by, interested to hear Alante's take on this. This is you don't we haven't really seen the rival transfers, at least not in football. We've had some in baseball that have gone from Texas to A&M. We've seen some in women's basketball go from A&M to Texas, but I think this is the first one I've seen in a long time, football wise, go from Texas to A&M. Tight end Amari Nyblack. Now Nyblack had a disappointing year in Austin in 2024. Obviously, it was behind Gunnar Helm, who had a breakout season. Phenomenal player. But they also like senior Juan Davis got way more snaps than Nyblack did. I think Nyblack had 6 catches all year, and he's not a true tight end. He's not going to block anybody really. He's a big like he could be your like in a different way. He can be your Noah Thomas replacement. He's 6'4", 235, 240 can has great ball skills, can like knows how to high point. Like go watch him in 2023 and playing with Jalen Milrow, who you never know where that thing's going with him. So he made some really spectacular catches. And this team, we talk about receiver, man. We really lacked a receiving threat at tight end. We, like Trey Watson was fine. Theo has, he's very talented and had some really nice moments. Like had some really spectacular touchdown catches, but just not like you need that the guy that's got the extra juice at tight end. Um, Nyblack has that. Now you're not going to put him in line and say, "Hey, go block," Colin Simmons or go block Dylan Stewart, or who's even on our schedule anymore? I'm trying to think. Go block an LSU defensive end. Like, don't ask him to do that. Um, maybe he can block an LSU safety, or something like that. But um, he's a guy, if you go two tight ends, maybe you've got Theo or Burketcher, like this other transfer tight end, or Micah Riley, and like maybe that guy, like maybe like the Theo or the Burketcher is the guy with the hand on the ground. Maybe an Amari Niblack is your H back, kind of off in like a wing, like a wing alignment, and that sort of thing. So, um, uh, let me see. I'm trying to read this from Alante. Were there any tight ends that came in from the transfer portal or a true freshman? Yeah, they got both. So they got Niblack from the portal, from Texas, and then like honestly, that's a great point because one of their most talented recruits in this class, the incoming class, was Kiadi Armstrong, from Jasper. He is a flat out physical freak, at tight end. 6'6", I think 245. Has arms like an offensive tackle. If he was going to the draft, he would probably measure longer arms than any of the tackles in this year's class. Um, Plenty of speed, plenty of size. He is the future of the position at A&M. But can he contribute right away? Maybe. I mean, we saw Jalen Weidermeyer do it, so it's possible. But I think with Niblack, with Theo, with a couple of other guys that are in the mix here, I don't know if Armstrong will be the guy, this early. But definitely circle that name, put that in the back of your mind to keep an eye on going forward. Um, let me. Was that it for offense? It was very defensive heavy draft. So we took three tight ends. So we took Niblack. We took from Nebraska, Nate Burr Burkircher. I'm going to figure that out. But Nate Borkircher from Nebraska, who's a fifth-year senior, and also Micah Riley from Auburn. He's your blocking tight end. He is, if he's in the game, he's going to block. And I think that's an underrated need. Like the guys we had last year didn't excel at either one of those things. Like they were pretty average at both, if we're being honest. Um, and I think now you have guys that at least they're at least good. They're plus players at one or the other. Like, hey, Mike O'Reilly, you can block defensive ends. Amari Niblack, you can get down the field and make big catches. Um, the guys we had last year just weren't spectacular at any one thing. And so at least now, if they're not great at both, you have guys that can do at least one of the two things you need tight ends to do. So I think that's a plus, and something that will improve this football team and the way that they want to play offense. Um, Defensively, we took three edges. We took a DT. We took two corners. I think that's it. Oh, sorry, I missed quarterback. We took a quarterback, sixth year, seventh year guy, old guy. I think he was at Baylor out of high school. Jacob Zeno came here from UAB. His He's just a veteran presence. If if Marcel Reed were to have to miss a snap and you didn't have Jacob Zeno this fall, you're relying on Miles O'Neill, who would be a redshirt freshman and has thrown four passes his entire career at A&M. Uh, and then after him is a 17-year-old kid that we signed out of high school. So, um, yeah, we didn't sign Zeno to be the savior or to really even probably compete with Reed. But he's a fail safe. He's like, hey, if things go bad, it's like having Cooper Rush. He is Cooper Rush. If you're a Cowboys fan, we're like, hey, this guy ain't gonna win us a playoff game, but maybe he can beat Minnesota or you know a shitty NFL team, because he ain't doing much else. But so you got him. But defense, I think two guys I want to point out for sure. Tyler Onyedim or Onyedim, DT from Iowa State, really really nice player. I think was maybe a second or honorable mention team All Big 12 player, maybe last year or year before. Um, I think he's the biggest get because you lost you lost Shamar Turner. There's I really really like the freshmen they signed at DT. I don't want them on the field this fall. It's not a recipe for success. One of them might do it, but I think Tyler on Yadim will either start or be heavily in the mix, along with Albert Regis and DJ Hicks. Also, fun fact: who led the country in batted passes uh, last year? Um, it was Albert Regis. He had 8 last year at playing defensive tackle, way more than anybody. I think the next was like 5 from a DT. Maybe it was 6, but yeah, he's really dang good at that. He's a really good player. I think him, Hicks, and Onyedim, that's a really good trio. You need one more guy to step up. Can it be a Dalen Evans? Can it be um, one of the true freshmen? Um, I think it's TBD, but you need one more guy to get in there and give you some more depth. Oh, also you lost Johnson, Brodus Johnson, a DT, so he was a pretty good rotational guy. After Onyedim, I like Jordan Shaw, the nickel corner from Washington. Uh, I need to watch all these guys in more detail, but just from the clips that I saw from his grade on PFF, um, I'm actually double check that right now while I'm on here, so I don't talk out of my ass. Um, Jordan Shaw defense. Um, so his coverage grade was not bad. It was 69.5. Um, but played primarily in the nickel. He's not a huge guy. On here he's 173. He's probably a little bit heavier than that, but he's a willing tackler. He's a physical player. I think with Tyreek Chappelle being TBD on the injury front, um, pretty sure that was an ACL in the Notre Dame game. Um, if Chappelle isn't 100%, I think Shaw is your starter at nickel. And then I like Julian Humphrey. So Julian Humphrey was in that 2022 class, was like a top 100 or fringe top 100 player. We didn't sign him because him and Bobby Taylor had beef, and we already had, the number one class of all time. We're like, it's fine. We don't need Julian Humphrey. Um, well, the kid's got speed. He's in a corner. If you can give me a tall guy that's fast, I'll take it. I'll take that in a college corner. Like you got a spot on my team if you're tall and fast and you can play cornerback. Um, Humphrey tried to transfer here last offseason when Elko first got here, and Georgia ponied up. They're like, "Nope, you're not leaving. We need you. We're going to start you." And I think he did fine last year. He gets a bad rap because of the Ryan Williams play, like the play of last season. You can't put that on him. I mean, like watch it. Like there's no corner on earth that's making that's stopping anything that's happening there. You can't put that on Humphrey, but I think he can start it. He can start for your football team at corner opposite Will Lee the third. Um, I know Des Ricks is uh, you know on he's high on the list of players people are mad about from an ANF standpoint. I understand. The bowl game was not good, but Humphrey's a guy that can compete. I think you have some freshmen that can compete, but I would look for. I mean, this is year number 4 for Humphrey. Yeah, so he's a senior. He's played a lot of football. He's been in a program at Georgia where they know how to win. So I think that's a pretty underrated get right there. How long we've been doing this? An hour? Okay. Um, next up, so edge. You took 3 edges. You lost several in the draft in the portal. So what you have coming back is Cassius Howell, who is a top 5 player on the football team this year. Rylan Kennedy, whose stock is soaring, really, really flashed it uh, throughout the season last year. And then you don't know what else you have because it's all true freshmen and Solomon Williams, who I really like and played, flashed a little bit in that ball game. Elko brought him up on Texags recently, which I think is notable. But you had nothing else. So you go get three guys, older guys for the well, two of them for sure. You got TJ Searcy from Florida. You got Deion Hayes from Colorado. Before that, he was at Pitt. He had a great season at Pitt in 23. Was doing fine at Colorado. Got hurt uh, and missed the rest of the season in like week 4. So hopefully the injury is not too bad. Um, I think Cersei can give you some snaps as a bigger guy. Um, that's the thing. I don't think Cersei or Hayes have the burst, but I think Howell and Kennedy both have the burst. So um, the X factor here is Samuel Impemba. So Impemba is one of those guys where I tried to go watch film on this guy because he's a pretty young player. He's been at Georgia for only 2 years. Was a 5-star or at least a borderline 5-star prospect, like a top 50 guy coming out of high school. Was at IMG Academy, all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, he's probably got some pretty good film I can go check out. That's recent. Um, all of his film is on offense, at playing tight end, like flex tight end. I'm like, dude, why were they doing that with you? Like they knew Georgia wanted you to be a defensive end. Why are they not, like, if he played defensive end, there's not a lot of tape of it. And he played very, very sparingly at Georgia. It's hard to really find much, but um, he does make, like uh, 247 does like their freaks list, and he's on there. Like they're, hey, this dude is rare from an athletic standpoint. Long arms, twitchy, quick off the ball, um, that sort of thing. He's a guy, so he'll be in his 3rd year this year. I think he's the lottery ticket where you're like, hey, this guy's a freak athlete. He needs a change of scenery. Maybe we can fix him or get him in the right space and the right mindset to be a good defensive end or a good pass rusher. Um, so yeah, is he going to be a starter? I don't think so. Probably not. Can he impact football games for you? I think he can. I think you can get him to a spot where he can be a good player for you. Um, I think that's it in terms of noteworthy additions. Let's see, we did him. I didn't mention Jonah Wilson, the receiver from Houston. So Jonah Wilson, when I heard this name, I was like, oh, it's a blast from the past. I forgot all about this kid. He was like coming out of high school. He was like top 150, like solidly a 4-star prospect on the services. Um, was crystal balled here at one point. Like him, like he's a Houston kid, so A&M kind of made sense. But ended up going to UH, and I think he's been hurt and just he's not played really at all. He's been there for 2 years, so he's a 3rd-year player also. Um, he's I think um, some of these are like spring tryout type of deals. If you know what I'm saying, where hey, like we're taking you, we're gonna bring you in, you're gonna compete, and if it's not there, then we're gonna move on. And that's just where college football is right now, and I'm fine with it. I mean, if you have to unturn every single stone and do everything in your power to get the best 85 as you can on this A&M roster, so you got Hudson, you lost him. We think he's not going to play here by all the way things are going. So if Wilson gives you anything, that's great. Um, who I would keep an eye on, and this is a topic for as spring football starts. Oh, by the way, just general podcast notes about this show that we do here. Um, I put the bat signal out on Twitter, and got lots of responses on, hey, I need a co-host because I've been doing this by myself for 8 or 9 months, and it's been fine, but could really use another person on this show to that I have chemistry with, that we could really get into some of these topics like with college football and that sort of thing. So had some good responses. I think there's some quality folks in that group. So throughout the next few weeks, for a few months, really, we'll be getting different folks on. to just kind of guest host. I'm calling them like a fan segment type of thing, where you know, we just kind of, riff on whatever is on their mind, and it's like a little it's like a tryout almost. But and I'm not, guaranteeing that I'm going to have a co-host or anything, but just trying to put feelers out, and if anyone has that want to, or that ability, and is interested, I'm open to entertaining it. So that's something that we're going to be doing here. Also trying to push for some other interviews as well. Um, uh, Bowtie is probably top of the list right now, just with all the different NIL stuff. There's so much stuff that I can't even touch on today, because it's just too much information to cram into this episode, and it's past my bedtime. So, but A&M signed a huge deal with the media partner to get 36 mil annually. In April, we're going to have the settlement hearing on the House case on it, paying the players. The schools finally paying the players, not the fans, which has never been a logical business model. So that's coming down pretty soon, and that's going to have huge ramifications. But I I'm off on a tangent here. Um, but oh yeah, so Jay Arnold, you guys know Jay Arnold, played at A&M, big Twitter personality, funny guy, great dude. He hosts the Aggie War Pod for Dave Campbell's magazine. His co-host, similar to me, wife just had a baby. He's out of commission for a little while. I'm going to be hopping on with Jay this spring and into the summer and fall, however long it goes, to talk Aggie football. And we're going to be hitting spring football pretty hard. But in the spring, every spring, guys you want to watch are these second year players. I my general stance on things is, hey, you don't want to play a lot of true freshmen. You just don't want to do that. Coaches would say back in the day, for every freshman in your starting lineup, that's a loss. You got five in the lineup, you're losing 5 games. Now that's, pretty old school way to think, but um, it ain't wrong, and it's not good to have a bunch of freshmen in your lineup. So I always watch those second year guys, and you're already hearing buzz about some of them. And I'm pissed, but this just means Elko is a smart guy. He took the guys I was going to say when he did an interview with TexAgs last week. I'm watching. Well, my number one, sleeper, wild card, dark horse, whatever you want to call him, Miles Davis at safety. Um, he may push to start. I think the safety play left a lot to be desired, and he was like there were guys that were veteran and capable, and they got a lot of playing time. He was just a true freshman. I don't think he was here for the spring. Maybe he was, but anyway, he didn't play. When he did play, he would take people's heads off and make some of the biggest, loudest hits you've ever seen on Kyle Field. Um, they might have something with Miles Davis. So he is a guy I have my eye on big time. Can he make a move and push for a starting spot at safety? Um, I would say Dalton Brooks is your best guy right now. Can Miles Davis be your second best? Can he pass Ratcliffe and Bryce Anderson? Maybe. I wouldn't put it past him. Um, Other guy is Ashton Bethel Roman, the receiver. I think he was brought up so much. Another guy did not get here until the fall, flashed immediately. Now, why didn't he play when we had an issue at that spot? I don't know. That's a great question. But I think Elko saying his name on radio, along with everything else, I think you probably look at this, you're like, oh well, we've got Terry Bussey, we've got Mario Craver and Concepcion, and we have no one else at receiver. Well, I think Bethel Roman is the next guy in line to really make a push at receiver, and I think he plays a lot this fall. Got my eye on him. Got my eye on pretty much every second year player. Like, hey, um, maybe not O line from a starting standpoint, but if you're anywhere on defense, like linebacker, um, and I love York and I love Scooby, but from a backup standpoint, like Damian Sanford um, was up and down a little bit last year. He missed some run fits here and there. Can a Jordan Lockhart or a Tristan Jernigan find their way into the mix? You know, in kind of a rotational aspect at linebacker, I think so. Um, any of the D linemen, Solomon Williams, Dalen Evans, Kendall Jackson. Um, I'm trying to think who else on offense. Isaiah Williams, the other receiver, very fast. You know, deep threat, deep speed. Um, really nice looking football player. I think I think those are the guys that you could see step up. You know, from that freshman class from last year and start making a push. But I don't know when spring practice. It should start pretty soon. The spring game is on April 19th. So, um, hey, as soon as we get that first video of them coming out of the locker room and stretching and whatnot, I'll be on this podcast saying we look great. Let's go win 10 games. But um, it feels so good to be back and talking to you folks. Appreciate you listening. Um, my regular guys and gals on here on YouTube, especially. Hope you guys didn't fall off. Hope you guys are still subscribed, and I look forward to hearing from you. But um, yeah, going forward, I'll try to be back on here uh, maybe every other week, maybe more. Well, maybe less. I don't know. We're gonna see, but definitely more than I have been. I won't go another 3 months without talking to you guys. So as always, appreciate your support. Be safe out there. Take care. Love you and gig 'em.